What's up everybody, I'm Beth.
And I'm Matt.
And today we are reviewing my Mercedes C300 4MATIC.
Yeah, so this is a 2019 model, and we've had it for about 2 years here now. And yeah, it's a really nice car that will be a driving review as well, so you can go watch that whenever that's posted. But as far as the interior here in the 2019 C300, so it's, you know, I think they've made some nice improvements here. This is the mid-cycle refresh for the C300, so 2019 is whenever they upgrade a lot of things. And this vehicle, you custom ordered it, and it's you know, pretty fully loaded.
Yeah, so I'll take over from here. I did do the silk beige leather interior, which I really like. I love the brightness of the leather because it does just really lighten up the cabin, especially with my huge panoramic moonroof here. I think that that's great, and I just feel like sometimes maybe I'm in a convertible or something, but without having to deal with a convertible. I don't know. So I really like it. I also got the brown lindenwood trim, which I really like. I think it looks really classy. It doesn't get any kind of scratches or anything like a piano black gloss would. So I think that it looks very nice, very sleek.
No fingerprints. No
fingerprints. So I think that it's a perfect trim for a car, honestly. I think it's really great.
I love feeling the grain of the wood too. It makes it, you know, more convincing. This is real wood, and it just feels a little bit more expensive, I think.
Yeah, it's so nice. So for the seats, they are really nice, obviously. I did get the heated and the cooled seats. The cooled seats are okay. They're honestly not the best, but on a hot day, sometimes they do give you a little bit of something, but it's definitely not as good as a lot of other cars. I do just like the feeling of having it, so maybe, I don't know, maybe it's a placebo effect, but I do think that they do work, just maybe not the best. I also have the memory seats, which is really great, especially when Matt drives the car, because he does drive it a lot, surprisingly, because I'm in the back with a baby, or I'm not even in the car, so he does drive it a lot. So it's really nice to have multiple buttons here for your memory seats. The bolstering is really nice. It's decently comfortable. I don't think that it's anything super sporty, but it's also not anything that is crazy plush.
It's just like a nice German luxury sports sedan kind of feeling, kind of what you would expect. I think they're really comfortable. I mean, we've spent over 8,000 miles in this C300 so far, and over the 2 years here. And I mean, they're nice and comfortable seats. I also like how you do have the lumbar adjustments, both for the driver and the passenger here. You also have passenger side memory, which is pretty rare. Even in some luxury brands, that's something you usually have to upgrade. And so this one does have that upgrade. And so it's nice to have that. Again, if you have different passengers that, you know, like having different positions there, that's great. And I will also add the cooled seats. I think even Mercedes just calls them ventilated seats, so it kind of just blows air. It's not necessarily cold air, but whenever you're sweaty and it's hot, it does, you know, cool you off a little bit. But yeah, like she said, they're not the best out there. They don't, you know, just, you know, spray you with cold air like you get with, you know, some of these other seats that do a really good job of making you freezing cold. These aren't quite as effective, but I think it still is a nice feature to have for sure. And yeah, I think they're great seats. You know, I love the perforation of them as well, so they kind of breathe well, even if you don't have any of the cooling going. Just having the holes in them makes it so they don't like stick to your back as much and things like that. And so yeah, I really like them too.
So coming over to the steering wheel here, it is nice and very round. I have no idea what I should be talking about here, but here we go. I have tons of buttons on here. I normally just use the hang up button on here, and every once in a while when I need to toggle with things on the dashboard, I'll use the little touch pads here, but that's basically it. I don't use a lot of it, but I know people do use a lot of it, so it is convenient to have.
Yeah, and it is, I mean, they're really nice. I mean, you have this like knurled aluminum here for the volume scroller and the cruise control settings there, and actual metal here for the trimmings on the wheel, and nice leather wrapping. Good 9-3 grip, 10-2 notches here, give it a little bit of sportier vibe. These touchpad buttons though, they sometimes don't work exactly how I want them to. Like, they work most of the time, but it's a little bit of an odd thing. I'd be fine just having a normal button instead of that. But
yeah, and sometimes they go really quickly to one side or the other, so that's kind of annoying, but at least like if you go slow you can figure it out.
Yeah, and I think after the past 2 years of using it, we've kind of gotten used to them. It's not a big deal.
Right. So these gauges are really cool. The gauges are all digital, which I love. So I did upgrade to the digital gauges, which are super cool. So there are 3 different modes of the gauges. There's sport, classic, and progressive. I like the classic because it is a nice blue. It's very easy to read. I like it a lot. With your sport mode, it's a nice yellow, and with progressive, it looks way more futuristic. It's a nice red.
In addition to the 3 different looks there, you also just have a bunch of customizations as far as what you can show on the middle portion there. So, it's kind of set up like traditional gauges, where that middle part is where you're going to have, your radio, media, navigation instructions, trip info, all those types of things you have there in the middle, as well as having a smaller little speed readout there in the top. It would be nice if you had a larger digital speed readout in the middle there, because that's one thing that her old C300 had with the older analog gauges, but with this, you just have that tiny little display up there, and it'd be nice if you could just have that as the main thing there in the middle. Unfortunately, you can't. Yeah, and also the gauges, I mean, they're pretty large too. It's a 12.3 inch display, and I also think it's kind of unique that it has a matte appearance to the screen. A lot of other digital gauge screens are glossy or more prone to fingerprints and things like that. This, it doesn't show any of that. It doesn't have any glare in the sunlight. It's very easy to read and just looks very high resolution as a result, and feels a little more natural and organic than having it, hey, look, I have a TV for my gauges. It doesn't feel like that. It just feels like normal gauges, but just a little more futuristic. I don't know. They just look really nice, but it is an upgrade you do have to pay for. Thankfully, at least with the 2019s, Mercedes allowed it to be an a la carte option. So I think you paid like an extra $500 or something, very reasonably priced to upgrade to those larger gauges, and you don't have to go for any multimedia package or any kind of high, expensive upgrade. You can just do that a la carte and have that, and so that was a no-brainer option whenever, we were speccing this out.
Coming over to the center of the dashboard here, it has this gorgeous 10.3 inch display. I love it. It has a lot of room to show you everything you need to see on here. It is compatible with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, so that is really nice. I have used my phone on a couple occasions here for the maps, which is really nice when I do need it.
It's also really nice that the Apple CarPlay is the full screen, because I believe even like the newer Mercedes system, it only uses a portion of the screen for your CarPlay. This, the entire screen is CarPlay. It's really a nice high resolution display too with this screen. It's just a really cool look how it's such an aggressive wide screen. It's not quite as boxy as some other screens in other vehicles, and it just looks really cool with the CarPlay running there. It is wired though, it's not wireless, of course. 2019 was a little too early for that. But yeah, it's great that it has all of that. And also, you have everything controlled with this scroll wheel here. And so this one, now we didn't get the multimedia package, but you could thankfully just upgrade to this screen again as another a la carte standalone option for just a few $100s. So thankfully we were able to get that without having to go into the navigation, which we didn't need. But because of that, we didn't have the touchpad here. So we just have the scroller wheel, but you don't really need the touchpad. We haven't missed it in the past 2 years. Your old one had the touchpad. You hardly ever used it.
Yeah,
right?
I didn't ever use the touchpad. I use the click wheel way more than the touchpad. It's way easier to figure out and way easier to use.
Yeah, so I mean, it feels great too. You have more of this knurled aluminum finish here on it, and the menu stuff here in the screen is pretty simple. They kept it nice and basic. You just have a few things here, especially since you don't have navigation. It's just radio, media, phone, and the vehicle stuff, and that's it. So it's very easy to digest. There aren't a million sub menus. There is a little bit you have to go into if you want to set presets and things like that, but like we usually just leave it on one station, then we'll just use the scroll wheel and just spin through a few different radio stations, all within the same vicinity, so we won't even really use the presets, honestly.
Yeah.
And it's totally fine, and you'll see your little climate controls reflected there at the bottom of the screen as well. And so yeah, it's a pretty simple screen and just works really well.
And coming down to the climate controls here, it is very nice that it's all in one line here. And I know that I mentioned this in the last review of my car that I did. It's very nice that it's all in one spot and you can figure out what you're doing very easily, so it's not like one button up here and one button down there. So I really enjoy it all being sleek and just there.
Yeah, it really is just a wonderful example of a concise and still really clean and beautiful looking interior design where, you know, I mean, just the knurled aluminum again you have here on these little switches just feels so expensive. And this is kind of the stuff that you get when you pay Mercedes prices, is that you get little details like this that feel just a cut above even some of the newest nice stuff like the Genesis models and stuff like that. This just feels a little bit nicer, a little bit of a nicer resistance to the buttons, all those little intricate details where the Mercedes is just a little bit nicer in a lot of ways. You do have a little bit of piano black here for this lower row of buttons here for the radio and stuff where your clock's at, but you know, at least it's a small enough amount of, you know, plastic there that it doesn't stand out too much or get too many fingerprints or look too bad.
Right, and it matches up here with your climate controls.
And then, you know, I just love also these round vents, which again just have a really nice resistance to, you know, the movement of them, and more of this knurled aluminum. It all just feels really nice. You also have this little trim piece of aluminum, and we also did pay for the extra stitching here and the extra padding on the tops of the dashboard, tops of the doors, which was again a small upcharge that really makes this feel a lot more expensive than your old C300, which, you know, this was still a little bit of a nicer plastic, but it felt a little cheaper, and this makes it feel a lot more expensive in here.
Right, I really like it a lot, and that's why I chose it.
Yeah, and then you also, along with all the infotainment stuff, you have this Burmester stereo, which is also another upgrade that we did, which I think was only, again, like $750 for like a way better stereo than the regular Mercedes. And you also have the nice metal speaker grills, but it really sounds really great.
Yeah, it sounds so good in here. I like to listen to my music loud. Now I can't really do that with a baby, but it's okay. It still sounds so good even at lower levels of volume.
And then whenever you're done with a baby and you're just jamming out on your own, it sounds really good at those higher levels too.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, everything about the interior just feels really expensive. Again, I love the wood on the doors here. It just all blends together, and I think, again, the way you spec'd it, it really looks nice with the contrast of the beige leather, so it doesn't feel too dark in here, but you still have some of the nice black leather here and there and stuff. It's just a really cool look.
Yeah, and one thing I also got that I am obsessed with is the ambient lighting. That is amazing to me. I do keep it one color. It's like a pinky purple, but you can pick any color of the rainbow, and I think that's really cool. You can change your mood. If you're feeling blue, you can go blue, and you know, it's awesome. I love it. It brightens up the cabin at night, and I think that it just makes you feel like you're not just completely in the dark when you're driving around, especially at night.
Yeah, it's really cool, and that's another a la carte option Mercedes lets you get, where you don't have to go for a fully loaded, you know, trim like a lot of other companies make you go for. With this, it's just you pay a few $100s and you have ambient lighting, and it's that simple. As long as you're willing to order, you know, you can get all these little things without, you know, going for some huge expensive package. And so it's really nice that they, you know, give you that option. I also love, you know, you have the little volume and drive mode scrollers here, which again, more of that knurled aluminum just feels really nice. You have a few blank buttons here because we didn't get all the driver assistance tech that you can get on these, but you know, I think it still just keeps this area nice and simple with just a few little toggles there, and that's about it. As far as storage spaces here in the C300, it's actually pretty good for a sedan of this class. So on the doors here, you have a nice large bottle holder and a pretty large pocket as well. And so, you know, the way the doors cut away here, you have a good amount of space there. You can fit pretty large bottles in there pretty well. Over in the middle here, you have two cup holders, as well as this other little area where you have your cigarette lighter or power outlet, and then another little like change holder thing in there. And so this area isn't big enough for a smartphone or anything, but you know, you can fit tiny little knickknacks in there. You know, but you know, it would be nice to have maybe a little bit of a bigger area just so you can fit a smartphone in there or something. But still nice to have nonetheless. Then you have the center armrest, which is very nice and softly padded. And you open it up, it does split in the middle when it opens, which is great, which means you can have, you know, one side open up if you just want to, you know, slide something in or out of there, and so the other person, you know, have their elbow on there. But anyway, you open that up and you'll see you have a good amount of space in there, as well as 2 USB jacks. That is where you're going to want to put your phone if you do use Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. There's also an SD card slot in there, which I believe is for the nav maps basically. But otherwise, yeah, just a good, little cubby there. And then moving on to the backseat space here in the C300, it's also, pretty appropriate for this segment of vehicle. Now with the new 3 Series that came out more recently and a couple other competitors, it probably isn't the roomiest backseat of the bunch, but it still is a pretty good amount of space. I'm 5'9", I'm sitting behind myself. I easily have about 3 inches of legroom to spare back there, and most of that is thanks to the way that they cut the seat back there, where there's these little cutouts so that it gives you a little bit more knee space there, and it's kind of a clever use of space, to maximize every inch there. And so because of that, it feels pretty roomy. Even with the panoramic roof here, I still have plenty of headroom, and you have that great view to look out of with that panoramic roof there, which does have a little cover, by the way. You can power close that if you want to have. It's just a shade. It's not totally solid for the cover there, but it's nice to have if you don't feel like having the sun beaming down on you or your passengers.
I do like sitting in the back seat. It's actually not that bad. I sit back there with the baby and I've been very comfortable. I just think that it's a very nice back seat.
Yeah, there's also a fold down center armrest there, which we have it all set up for the baby, so I'm not going to mess with that. But it's the typical, fold down little center armrest with 2 cup holders that pop out of the front there. And so that is where you'll find your primary cup holders, because otherwise in the doors there you do have a little bottle holder and a little pocket there. You also do have dedicated air vents here, and so it's really nice you have those, and there's also another little storage space. It's about the size of an ashtray. It's still kind of got that old school kind of sizing to that whole thing, and it has a power outlet back there, which again could be a cigarette lighter in the olden days, but so you have that little setup there. And then moving on to the trunk space here in the C300, it's your average trunk for this segment. I'd say again the newest competitors probably have a little bit of a bigger trunk. It's a decent size, it's pretty wide, pretty long, it's just not very deep, so sometimes fitting larger items in there can be a little bit tricky. And some of the newer competitors do have a little bit of a deeper trunk. Some have an even shallower trunk though. I think like the Alfa Romeo Giulia, for example, has even a shallower trunk than this. So I'd say it's kind of mid-pack as far as compact luxury sedans go, but should be totally usable for most people. And of course, if you do want more space, they do have many other options with the GLC, GLB, things like that, if you really do want a ton of space. But for an average sedan buyer, I think you'll have a decent amount of space and won't have too many complaints there. And also, this one does have the power closed trunk, which is a nice touch. I believe that came with the premium package, and so that's a nice little touch, although it does confuse a lot of people whenever they go to close the trunk if you do any kind of curbside pickup or something.
Yeah, just be careful because it does make a very scary noise when closed.
Yeah, if you're trying to shove it down without using the power thing, it doesn't like that very much. But thankfully it still does okay when you do that. It doesn't actually break. But yeah. But anyway, yeah, so I think that's about it as far as this interior. I mean, we've lived with it now for 2 years, and it's basically the same kind of bones as your old C300. And it's always been a comfortable place to be. And yeah, I think these new upgrades here for 2019 they did, and the way that we spec'd it with having all the newest tech and stuff makes it feel a little more modern, and then feels right up there with all the newest stuff out there these days. And yeah, it'd be nice if it was a touchscreen. That's really the only thing that I think sometimes makes it a little bit more challenging to use. But I haven't had any complaints. I think it's just a really nice interior.
Yeah, I love this car. I'm going to be super sad to see it go when we do get a new one, but for now I'm just going to continue to enjoy this car. And yeah, it's gonna be good. We got another year or so here on the lease most likely, and then yeah, we'll be upgrading to something a little more family friendly. Yes.
But yeah, so anyway, that's all of our thoughts here on the interior in the C300. Be sure to go watch the driving review where Beth is behind the wheel here and talks about what she likes about the driving dynamics and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, let us know your thoughts on the interior of the 2019 C300 in the comments below. Thank you guys very much for watching. We'll see you on the next one.
Take care.